Hello there, and welcome back to our next session. I'm Jerry the Big Bear Barrett, and it's been a lot of fun being your host and MC here throughout this entire event. I'm learning so much. I've enjoyed the storytelling and all the wisdom and knowledge that's being passed on by our delegates, that's you, and of course our presenters. It is the Anishinaabe Aski Nations Language and Curriculum Training Conference, and we are looking forward to our next session just about to begin. Another update, we will have a play to win code word on this one. So if you're playing along at home, make sure you jot down the code word at the end of this session, and you too could be a big winner when we spin the wheel, the big wheel of fortune at the end of the show. So the play to win code word is coming up. All right, I know a lot of you within classroom activities and are always looking for fun and inventive ways to keep the kids, kids engaged in learning. And that's what this one's all about. Games for children in language immersion. And we have got two presenters on this one. We welcome back Cass Spade and Bimikaway. Hello, Bimikaway. It's good to see you. Now, I want to read their bios once again for you. And there they are. Everybody wave. And oh, there's Little Bear. He's waving at you too. He loves games. So I'm going to dodge over here and let Little Bear continue on camera here while I do some investigating. All right, Cassandra, as I introduced her yesterday, Cass Spade, of course, is the founder of a grassroots organization that works to provide youth programming. Her work is community-driven with a focus on relationship building, relocalization, youth leadership, community healing, and accessibility. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree, what? Yes, from the University of Manitoba with a major in history, a certificate in community economic and social development, from Algoma University, and is a graduate as well. Now, from an Immersion, Ojibwe Immersion Academy. Currently, she's a law student at Lakehead University in the Bor-Alaskan Faculty of Law. Wow, that's awesome. All right, the Mikaway is from Rama First Nation. Yay, Rama First Nation. That's in Southern Ontario. He's worked as a teaching assistant at an Ojibwe Immersion Academy and as an organizer at the Adult Immersion Academy. He's a graduate of the Ojibwe Immersion Academy, OG, and currently he's working on his Bachelor of Arts degree from Algoma University. So please put your bear paws together and welcome to our big stage here, Cassandra and Bimikaway. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Big Bear and Little Bear, for such a kind introduction. So please host yourself well and take breaks when you need to. I know that we've been on Zoom all day, so if you need to look away and work on a hand-making project, please feel comfortable to do so. And we hope that you have a warm cup of tea or coffee nearby as we go through. So Buju, Gakinawia, Nin, Cassandra Indishnikas, Gema Cass Indigu Gae, Nimanenda Nue Cass, Mishki Gogumang Indonji, Kuchiching Ishkanaganing Ingijiumbik, Name Indodem, Ingagwe Kendan Anishinaabe Moin, Jeneta Anishinaabe Moyan, a Davishko second language learner Ejnikadek, Mi Giabi Gikinoma Gozian, a Buchdashningadin Giabi Nawanakijue. So hello, my name's Cass, or please call me Cass. I'm from Mish. We did some introductions yesterday where I talked about my language journey and being a second language learner. And I also spoke about yesterday falling in love in language. And so I'm very excited to share with all of you the man of the hour, and I'll let him introduce himself. Here's my lovely husband, Bimikaway.
Oh, Nijinishna Bedok, Mi Gainin Bangi, Gain Dajindaman, Gain Wawindama, Gayansa, Wenen, Ayawean, Bimikaway, Indigenous, Bimikaway, Indigenous, Kevin Guy, Indigenous Kenemigo, Dick Gainin and Dodem, Waisi mia we du demian dik. Minjikening nin and dunji. Wasa guna jawanung. Ayamagade in the Shkonigan. Minjikin Rama Jaganashi Winakade the Shkonigan. Gikinomage nin, Iwide, Georgian, Gebegit Ken Dasu, Gamakong in Dananoki. Yeah, Nimiguachuendam, Mayaya Nongum, Koedash Nui Miguachua, Al Kokonan, Nama Ejeba, Nimiguachua, also. Yeah. Oh, so my name is Bimikowe, also known as Kevin in English, and I'm very happy to be here today and to share with everybody a little bit about games and activities you can play in immersion with kids as well as adults. So yeah, it should be very fun.
All right, so today we'll be sharing about the games you can play with children in immersion. Of course, you can adapt them to play with adults or any age group, even our elders, Gichiyag. So everything that we're sharing today comes from a lot of places. It comes from the Wadokodading School, the immersion programs we've been to, Ojibwe Motarida, Omagida Kiminang, or UG, and Eshke Nishna Bamchik. And of course, a lot of different organizations, elders and speakers, and our family members. So this is really about our own experience working in immersion and also learning in immersion, because we are both simultaneously teachers and learners. And so that relationship of ongoing learning is very much part of what we do. And so we hope that this encourages you in your own language journeys, as we are both second language learners, and your own day-to-day teaching and advocacy for immersion program. So before we get in, we of course want to share some language statistics just to really get you pumped up and want to go out in the world and do some immersion programming. Like I said yesterday, based on reports by Canada and the United Nations, there are about 70 Indigenous languages in Canada that are living. And so what that means is that there are people speaking these languages. Once a language transitions from living to becoming a dead language, it means there's no more speakers and that those languages cannot be revived. And so it's very important that we keep taking care of our living languages. And based on a Statistics Canada report in 2016, out of those 70 Indigenous languages, over half of them, meaning 40 of them, have less than 500 speakers. And so they face the severe prospect of becoming a dead language in the next couple of decades. And so we bring that to you to just talk about, we need to do this now. We need to do it in all different types of capacities and ways that we can, and start advocating for immersion programming. And as Emma mentioned in a previous room, this is the decade of Indigenous languages, and it takes about a decade to develop fluency or proficiency. And we are still really young learners. Mm-hmm. I'm more baby than my husband, but we're going, and so we share that with you. So, anything you want to say to that?
You summed it up very well.
My husband likes to listen, as all good husbands do. So we hope that if you take anything away from today, it's to invest in an immersion and immersion programs, camps, blocks, spaces, and everything that you do. So we'll share our screen now. Full screen. So our overview will be really talking about those games in immersion. We're going to do some other bookmaking activities and extend those games into other types of activities you can do with students or anybody really. And I will pass it off to Bimikowe to talk about some of their favorite games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mingwech. So today, I just like to share with you some of my favorite games to play in immersion. We can't cover all of the games, of course, but I hope by demonstrating some of the games that are quite popular and some that you are all probably very familiar with, you can see how games can be developed or changed, altered, varied for immersion settings, either with children or adults. So these are just 5 of some of my favorite games. These are all happen to be very common games as well. And they may go by different names, but we'll explain each one as well. So before we get into the first one, I also wanted to mention that these are just these aren't made. These aren't Ojibwe specific games, right? They can be played in any of our indigenous languages and can be adapted to suit your needs. So that being said, first one, it goes by different names. I've seen change chairs, fruit bowl. We know it as well, in the language, andabin, gishbin, so on, or change seats if. And I think that's probably one of my favorite games that we play in immersion for adults as well as children. So, so how this game works is students, whether they're children or adults, right, can sit in a circle in whichever space is necessary, with just enough chairs for all but one student, right? So one student will be without a seat, and that student will be facing the other students. All the students will be facing the same direction, right? Which will be the student. And sorry, I just have to move this box real quick. My apologies. There we go. So the student who is leading the game, right, or asking the questions, they'll ask, change seats if, or in Ojibwe moment, or in Ojibwe language, andabin, gishbin, and then you pick a prompt, right? Ideally, these prompts are themed, right? So if you're teaching about colors for the week, they can be something as simple as, andabin, gishbin, bizakaman, gego, whatever, right? Whatever colors you're looking at. So that's a pretty brief, basic understanding of that. And they can be much more complicated as well. So if you wanted to teach something like a participle, so you can expand on your colors by saying, andabin, gishbin, bizakaman, gego, mesquandeg. So if you're wearing something red, and they can be easily scaled up to suit the difficulty. And so all the students who are wearing something red, right, or yellow or whatever color, get up from their seats. They look, they scramble, they look and try to find a seat that's available, and only the students that are wearing something red can actually stand up and change places, and they have to, right? And the student who is in the middle, who originally asked the question, will then seek out a free position, a free chair, and sit down. And so in this way, it encourages, rapid movement, really developed speech, actually. And I just have to move one more thing. My apologies. Our setup is, there we go. And so like this game and all the other games that we'll talk about, like I said, it's best to theme them. So if you're talking about colors for the week, if you're talking about hunting items, andabin, change seats if you've ever gone hunting up, up the hill, in the mountain, in the bush, by the river, and so on. Ideally, you want to be transitioning this game into, whatever it is you're discussing with your children or students, that day. Yeah. So that's change seats. Really, just a rudimentary look at it. So.
And the game gets really vicious because everyone wants that seat. So if you're wearing a lot of colors, it might not be a good day for you because you have to change if you're wearing purple, blue, pink, and you're trying to find a seat. So it's really fun and it's really quick. You have to understand language quickly in order to get a seat, and you have to be able to respond to it too. So it's a really fun game. I said vicious, but it's just really like it's really engaging.
Yeah, very engaging. Encourages a lot of language use for the students. If you want to teach them the specific patterns for that week, it's a very relatively easy way to do so. And just a quick personal story regarding this game is when I was teaching in Immersion, I was very surprised at how quickly students picked up on the sentence and the sentences, as well as the specific conjugations that I wasn't teaching them, to say this, you put a specific ending here, right? I was merely teaching in Immersion, and they picked up on the conjugations that they needed to use. And so I would hear it throughout the week, them using those exact same conjugations, exact same words and words, vocabulary and phrases. So it's quite a fun game, very engaging. So, So the next game that I really enjoy playing, and I should also mention that the context for these games are mostly from my time in teaching Ojibwe immersion with children, right? So for this game, you have your students or children lined up, and all facing the instructor, teacher. You will then, the teacher announces a word. Once again, ideally from a themed vocabulary list. It can be things like hunting words that you're going to be looking at that week, ricing words, ricing vocabulary, anything that's themed, right? Something that they're going to have to keep using throughout the week. So you have your students lined up, and starting from left to right or right to left, whichever, the instructor will say a word, right? A word that'll be relevant to them all week. And one by one, each student will pronounce that word. So starting from right to left, the student at the very end will say we'll use the word sparkle. The first student says S, next student P, next student A, next student R, and so on. They spell the word, right? And if a student, mispronounces it or makes a mistake, that student sits down until the word is spelt, and then that student stands back up again. It's very fast as well. It can be very fast with younger children or younger students. You want to use fairly short words with a low amount of syllables. But then if it's too easy, you can incorporate much longer words, and there are very long words in Ojibwe. So you can incorporate those. You can incorporate full-on sentences into this type of game, as well as songs. It's very versatile. A lot of variations. I've seen a lot of variations with this game, and I haven't played it with adults yet. But the next chance I get, I will, because I think it'd be very fun there as well. So that's Sparkle.
Yeah, just to reinforce spelling, reading and writing, those types of skills in language as well.
Yes, very important. So the last one that we'll really go most into depth with is picture prompts. And I'm sure every teacher here is familiar with picture prompts. They can be used in every subject, basically, from math to language arts to social sciences and anything, right? So for this activity, students are shown a picture, right? It can be very busy, elaborate, or it can be abstract, and students can come up with stories for the picture. They can be timed using as much vocabulary as they can. They can create short stories, once again, that are themed for the week. You choose pictures that are themed, or just randomly. So this is a good activity for all students, right, with varying degrees of language abilities. Right. For lower levels, students can be prompted with questions as they see the picture. Students can also, there are other variations you can do with higher level students as well, such as spot the difference picture prompts, right? That encourages a lot of vocabulary as well, a lot of language use. Because you have to describe the exact differences from this picture to the next. kind of like a where's Waldo picture prompt, encouraging students to look for various items within the pictures. And again, all of these are to promote language use in the classroom or wherever it is you're having your immersion camp, and it's very effective, very effective. So at the bottom there, those are just some quick examples you can give students of younger students for the question prompts. So so those are just three that I wanted to share with you. If you're an educator, you're already very familiar with these games, and it's not limited to you can have a lot of fun with most of the games that you already know, right? It's just converting them into converting the vocabulary, commands, everything that you'll use into Ojibwe language. The oldies are goodies, right? The old games, the classics, like charades, Pictionary, building off those in immersion is ideal when you're starting out, because everybody's already familiar with these types of games, and so learning how to play them doesn't have a very high barrier to entry, right?
One thing about picture prompt too, it can be really fun to only show one student the picture and have them describe it to the classroom, and then get the classroom to figure out what's going on in the picture. So for example, I was shown a picture of a man on a Segway with that moving machine, the robot with the wheels, and he was walking a dog, and the dog was wearing socks, and the dog had a collar, and I was trying to come up with a word for Segway and talk about what it was doing. And these people, they were just like, I have no idea what you're talking about, trying to like come up with words for it. So it's really fun to play picture prompts in many different kinds of ways too. And then speaking to his talking about the oldies being goodies, and it's really easy to develop and facilitate games that already exist. We don't have to go too far beyond our imagination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you're in community, like when we're in community, you can take these games that you already know, apply Ojibwe vocabulary to them, and take it a step further by incorporating cultural pieces within those games and activities. So adapting, common classroom games and activities. So an example of that is, instead of when we play hangman, for example, right? It's having something more culturally relevant, such as a deer hang, replacing,
The hanging
the
man.
hanging man, yes. Yeah, or something like replacing English names. So on the first slide, one of my other favorite games to play with kids is Simon Says, right? Or the Mikawe Kado command, right? Teaching commands for all of us, for Gin, Ginawa, Ginawen, right? You, y'all, us. It's a very good game, but something as simple as replacing an English name with an Ojibwe name, right? And that doesn't just apply to Simon Says, that can apply to stories, having things that are more culturally relevant to the students in your, in your immersion space, I think helps them, find the games more engaging.
Make away a wheel one.
Mm-hmm.
Make away, his wife says. So then moving out of just playing these games, you can also incorporate different forms of play or engagement, and specifically repetition. A lot of these games have repetition in them, and we can infuse that into art making or crafting. And so we had the lovely Larry Beardy doing a lot of storytelling, and you can hear even in the English storytelling, there are a lot of common patterns that are happening. And so when we storytell with children in language, they are developing those patterns at the same time. And we played a really fun game where one person would start a sentence in a story, and the next person would continue that sentence, and we would sit in a circle and we would storytell in a circle together. So we would develop a story all along the way. And so you have to be able to listen for what other people are talking about, but then also come up with a story too. And it becomes really comical and quite funny. And so these are really fun ways to incorporate that into storytelling. And then like our host, Jerry, the Big Bear with Little Bear, radio writing or script writing or infusing writing and having comedy shows and stories and skits like that is a great way. And then of course, our crafting activities like canoe building, beading and quilling, bookmaking, snowshoe making. And so one of the ways that I like to do this is through bookmaking. And I like to think of the type of vocabulary that I'll need to make that activity and the grammar patterns that are associated in it. And earlier this morning, we looked at morphology. So understanding how words are formed and taking it a step further. And so, for example, when I work in my beginners class with NAN, it was 6 different classes, and on each class we would build upon the vocabulary from week to week, and we would build in different commands and learn different phrases. And what it led up to was an immersion block. So if you remember from yesterday, I spoke about having immersion blocks. So very structured time of immersion for either 30 minutes to an hour, whatever you have the capacity to do. Because these classes were online, I only had an hour and a half to do these things. So I had to be really strategic and create a structured plan. So from the 6 classes, we would build vocabulary, grammar patterns. We would learn about morphology, how words come together, kind of like Lego blocks. And then the last class was an immersion class of bookmaking. And so I'm going to show you some examples of bookmaking in a second. But also what was really nice from this was there's an artist from the Algoma region named Elizabeth Creeth who really sparked the idea for me. She had done a bookmaking workshop on Zoom, so we couldn't be together. We had to be far apart. And she brought in just paper as the material, and we could create something together while being socially distant that was quite accessible to a number of people. And then to think about accessibility, how are people engaging with this? How are they making these types of books? What do they need? And so Elizabeth Creeth really sparked the idea of bookmaking for me. And then I just took it a step further to infuse it into programming or things to do with people. Because when we do something physically, it becomes really easy to absorb the vocabulary and to have a memory associated with the vocabulary as well. And so, so bookmaking.
Yeah, and a lot of when we create these spaces for immersion, sometimes it seems daunting to, we got to develop all these games and activities that we want to do. But like I said before, as I mentioned, chances are you're already familiar with, culturally relevant activities, such as the ones listed here, like canoe building and beading and quilling. Or even if you're not, chances are somebody that is. So incorporating that stuff that you may already know the words, phrases, how to do, incorporating that into the classroom or into whichever space becomes easier because you're already familiar with it. Yeah,
it's really easy to take. Say you have a specific skill, like we talked about Larry and Jerry and all of the people here, you all have specific skills that you can teach, and it's very easy to put it and apply it in immersion. And if we can do it as a beginner class collectively, some in this NAN class that just happened, the 6 sessions, it was some of their first time being introduced to language, and already they were in immersion and they were able to follow along and understand and really work our way through it. And so this is the bookmaking activity we have. So like I said, we worked on the vocabulary, the grammar patterns, and then we were engaging in immersion to create books. And I'll just show you a couple small examples. This was the very basic book we built together. And it's just a very simple open, a close and fold one. You just need a pair of scissors and a piece of paper to do this. But essentially what we did was I would ask them, Anin Ishnikazayan, what's your name? And they would write their names and they would go through all the questions we learned. Anin Ishuebakagwajing, what's the weather like? They would draw the weather. They would write the words that they learned. We would talk about different animals. And at the end of it, they would have a book of their first intro class with together. So it would be their own documentation of the class itself and a real tangible way to see how they applied their learnings into something physical. And so when they open their book, I hope they remember all the times we laughed together and worked through language. And there's always these really funny moments in language, and it brings in play and laughter. And I think sometimes when we're learning language, we become so anxiety ridden and we're panicking and we start to sweat because we're trying to say the right thing. And we just got to let go of that and have fun and play. And I feel like when we are crafting or making together, it does that. So we would create books and ask the students to respond to questions. But of course, you could get into more advanced types of bookmaking. You could make pop-up books and just keep going. And it's nice to see the students develop their own creativity in it too, because I am teaching them this small thing, but they also have the ability to teach me too, because they can bring new questions to the floor. They can teach me new techniques, and it's very much hands-on, observational, that kind of experiential learning. And so this is just another example. So you can find old buttons and birch bark, and you can really use any of the materials you have at home to make these. And so it's infusing play into learning, developing those reading and writing skills. We're creating our own resources so that they can always remember the classes they've been to, using imagination, repetition. And I think allowing for diverse ways to engage in immersion. Sometimes it's so focused on producing language, we forget about listening, or if someone asks you what something looks like, how would you draw it in, and how would you describe it in your target language? So really learning by hands-on doing and observational skills.
Yeah, and one thing that I'd like to draw attention to in this slide is quite remarkable, really. So, you know, the bookmaking activity, is it something we learned at Waterkodaning? I think so. Right? No, not okay. So it's something I learned at Waterkodaning during my time there, and it's very, very versatile. It's done with most of the younger grades, but it becomes, it can become more advanced and can turn into something much more complex in higher grades. But so what does this do, right? As Cassandra mentioned, infusing play into learning, very naturally, right? Develops reading and writing skills, right? And when we're teaching in a classroom setting, realistically nowadays, any setting, when we're teaching the Ojibwe language, these are very critical skills to develop early on. And this bookmaking activity is a very good way to do that. So so in the picture, in the photo that we have in the slide is taken from a news article, but it's not unique. And what I mean by that is, in the Ojibwe Immersion School, the Ojibwe Immersion Institute, rather, this is daily. This is very common. It's it's still very much special and perhaps unique to our language overall. But in that space, these students learn this at a very young age, and they learn different methods associated with this bookmaking activity. So in the photo, you can see that there are picture prompts, right? That the student received a pre-printed book with picture prompts. I believe it's associated with the sugar bush season. So before sugar bush happens, students go through several weeks, if not a month, of learning words and vocabulary around tools and practices, anything to do with math in and around the sugar bush. And so I don't know how old the student is here. I'm guessing 8 or 9, but based on the picture prompts, she's writing her own sentences in there. And so she says, Induja ege netum gida something. So she's saying, so first I tap the tree, right? And you know, that's just the prompt. There's other books that you can make which help teach morphology, right? So another book I saw taught about track making, right? So it'll say awenen we du koed. So who are you? Whose tracks are you going after, right? And it might say, oh, bimikawe wabus on one page, and then on the next one it might say animikawe wabus, or wakewakawe wabus, that the rabbit's tracks come to an end, and so that highlighting the ko morpheme in that word is so I say that to say very versatile. You can see the effects of at least a couple of years of using this bookmaking activity on this one particular student that I want to emphasize is not unique to the school. And yeah.
So, you'll just keep going.
I'll just keep going, sorry.
But I think another great thing about this is that we're always like, oh, we need more resources, but each time we have lessons or we ask students and learners to create stories, we're creating our own resources. And these bookmaking practices show us that we can shelf our own classrooms or spaces with all of our own materials and resources that we have made and that come from our communities. And I think it's really special when you pick up a young person's book and they've written a story about something and you get to read it, and it builds like a pride in them too, that they are a story writer, they are a maker, and they're doing this in their own language. And so the bookmaking activity is just so exciting to see for a number of reasons. And I mean, they start to get more complicated. You know, you can make all kinds, like this one is little wishes to my husband. So just nice little notes to him. And it's a little tiny book, but you can see the bookmaking can become really imaginative. And also when we're doing these types of activities, we want to encourage sensory kind of engagement. So what does it feel like? What's it touched like? You can put different types of materials in it. And you don't even have to think of the paper being the only way to make books. In fact, we can broaden it to include more diverse ways of bookmaking. So for example, this is an accordion book, and it doesn't look like a traditional book, but it still tells a story, and it's reusing and repurposing a lot of different materials that might be scraps or left around the classroom, which, you know, is very much part of our communities, is being resourceful and using everything that we have. And so the bookmaking is just an example of that. And just, I don't know, it reinforces innovation because you can make all new kinds of books, imagination and making, and of course, reinforcing grammar and vocabulary around it, and bringing art making into crafting. And the reason why I talked at great length about the bookmaking was during the pandemic, it was really hard to be with people. So what are craft activities that we can do at a distance that don't cost a lot of money, or don't cost a lot of money to ship and to send somewhere? And it's very easy to have a piece of paper, old newspaper or something on hand that you can do something right away with. Okay, so I think that's kind of it for our games and talking about bookmaking. So we were going to open the floor to some questions if there were any out there. So I'll stop my screen share.
All right. There's one comment that came in at 1:48 from Ira Johnson, but it's in language, so I can't speak it, but I don't know if you can translate there, and perhaps that is a question.
Yeah, I was just looking at it here. So piche gimeno tagozim. So you know, you guys sound really well. Ki Anishinaabe Moeg. So when you speak Anishinaabe, eh? So miigwech Lorraine. Yeah, miigwech Kajishink. Yeah.
Yeah, what I like is that you're using games that are already exist and kind of repurposing them or reimagining them to fit, whatever classroom size you have. I came up with an idea. Now that, what if you took 2 or 3 Scrabble games with those tiles that have the letters, and then because the Ojibwe words have many letters, and then you put that, maybe empty 3 boxes with those letter tiles into a pile, and then you make Ojibwe words using the letters from the Scrabble board.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Ojibwe Scrabble. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a great idea. I think that's, there are a lot of board games as well that you can quite easily convert into Ojibwe themed board games, or at least use Ojibwe language with them. Scrabble is a great example of one that at Oog we played at Ojibwe Motarada, Magida Kimanong. There's a few board games laying around, and that was when we played. But so as you saw with David's presentation, some of our letters are a little different. Sometimes you have to copy and paste your own letters on the Scrabble tiles, but once you do that, it's very fun, and it might even be helpful to have 2 Scrabble kits and kind of cannibalize the letter tiles from the other one to make a more
I saw a Monopoly that had like a Walmart and a berry bush and like all of those different funny places.
Yeah, in Ojibwe. Yeah, and to your point too, Jerry, is that when we're just starting out, we want this to be as you want it to be as low pressure as possible, as low as easy as possible, right? So you don't want to be reinventing the wheel, right? You don't need to sit down and try to think up a bunch of games that have never been done before, or things that you want to be using things that we're familiar with, especially in adult immersion. With kids, you can make up games.
You can make a game out of anything.
Yeah.
The favorite game I had with the kindergartners was I would put my hands behind my back and I would pull out like a 4 and another 4, and I would ask them to add it. And so they would be sitting in front of me and I'd be like, oh, Zanagana, it's going to be hard, And then I would ask them to add really quickly, and they would just scream out numbers in Anishinaabe, and whoever got it right got to stand up and do a clap. So you can make games out of anything. And one of my favorite things in the kindergarten classroom was we had playtime. And so it was really unstructured time where they could play wherever they want. Some of the kids love to play puzzles, so I was constantly playing these puzzle games with them, just infusing language like Giga Kendas, you're so smart, these types of things. And then I would move to this play corner around puppets and storytelling, and I would just create stories out of puppets and get them to engage with the puppets, or move to the kitchen and be cooking up little plastic spaghettis. Kids just want to play.
Yeah. And you're getting some wonderful comments on your book making. I thought that was very innovative, and especially when like you mentioned, supplies. You want to have new resources in the classroom, but you can make your own resources with whatever materials you might have available to you. So I thought that was very innovative. And snakes and ladders is fun with numbers. Someone is commenting. They play snakes and ladders with the vocabulary. Students must choose a card, say the vocabulary sentence that goes with it before taking their turn playing snakes and ladders. So snakes and ladders, apparently an option there for something.
Another fun thing I would see was we'd put out this giant piece of paper and we would scribble all these different markings on it, and then get the kids to color in the different spots. And all of the kindergartners would be around a table making this collective art piece together, but they would be speaking in the language, talking about what colors they want, or you pass me this, I need this, and just coming together to create art. And I think sometimes we might overlook art making or crafting in our schooling because we're so focused on science and bringing that in, or math, reading and writing, but that we forget that making is such an essential component to our communities. We each had a different craft. There would be snowshoe makers, hide tanners, all birch bark canoe makers, and we needed one another. And so these collective gifts of bringing them in is really nice.
Right.
Yeah, I like this idea here of wood burning syllabics or whatever orthography you use in your indigenous language into the tiles of the Scrabble kit. That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Like that idea.
Rock, paper, scissors. My students loved rock, paper, scissors in the language, especially the sentences they use to encourage each other. These are wonderful examples of how people are using games in their school, in their classrooms, and I think that's what our breakout sessions are going to be talking about as well. Some of the and we can share ideas. That's the whole idea, right? Is to be able to share your innovative ways to communicate with the kids and through activities. And I loved arts and crafts as a kid as well. I always thought that was a fun activity. And I don't know, and I love sketching too. I love drawing animals and funny scenes, etc. in the classroom. Build a snowman, or reverse the snowman. In other words, as the snowman melts, make a flippy snowman, so he's standing on his head, right? Instead of the traditional way.
Good idea.
And that's true, right? Because the weather plays such an important role in some of the communities, the remote communities. So you use what resources that we have at hand, and snow is certainly one of them.
Yeah, and I like so as we mentioned with just incorporating games and activities that we already know, mentioning Hangman, right? The game we all know how to play, how it's played. Replacing the hanged man with a deer hang is something that I used to do. I'm seeing that somebody also replace it with grow flowers. So making a flower instead of the hangman is a very, very beautiful variation of that activity.
Or snaring a rabbit.
As well. That's another one. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah.
Roxanne says, when I play bingo, I get into character and say, okay, now you are in Mrs. Bingo Hall. You must turn over your bingo caps. Quit in the hall or quiet night. Quit in the hall, and you can only speak Ojibwe numbers. Oh, okay. Now when they that way that we must say in language to win bingo, I guess.
Yeah, teach them bingo etiquette. Etiquette.
Yeah. Thank you, Roxanne.
I've never been to bingo before.
What?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Those are some of the wonderful ideas that our delegates are sharing with us this afternoon.
And I think to extend these ideas of games to adults are also really important. We talk about children and not having to explain the games to them, but when we're playing games as adults too, that also reinforces like laughter and letting go of the intense pressure of learning our languages, especially as second language learners. You can go in a space and feel very intimidated, and these beautiful elders are speaking so quickly at you that you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. But when we're playing games, you make mistakes in games all the time. That's the point of play. And there's this story I always share with my classes. When I was first learning language, I walked up to this table of elders, and it was lunchtime, and they wanted to ask me, oh, what are you going to eat today? And I had wanted to say pie, be two sichigan. I wanted to say this like pastry pie, this layered, beautiful treat. And I had said be tushkigan, which means underwear or panties. And so all these elders start laughing at me because I told them I wanted to eat underwear. And I think games Like if we play games like that, they just let us have fun and have laughter. And those elders, they just wanted to have fun in language, and that's the most important part. So games are such a big component of immersion.
Mhm.
And I wanted to add this. I didn't know where to add it, and so this looks like a great opening. I've been to so many conferences and gatherings across Canada, and I'm always standing in the background waiting to go on stage and do my presentation. But our people come up with so many creative, innovative games to play during treaty days or what have you, like holding a beanbag between your knees and having to, maybe it's for a length of time, or you have to pass the beanbag from between your knees to the next person. And they've come up with so many games based on TV shows like Survivor, and there's so much laughter, and there's no money involved in developing these games. And I guess perhaps the elders have come up with these might be games from generations ago, but the laughter, it's just amazing to see how innovative and creative we are as a people, and saving money on a game that looks silly but is so much fun for everybody to participate in. So I always thought that was amazing.
Yeah,
I want to thank Lorraine and Michael. Michael suggested that, well, no, he liked your books, thought that was a great idea. I just want to acknowledge these people. Rose is collecting her Scrabble tiles now. Leanne Marshall is out there. And she thanks everybody for the wonderful ideas. And Michael also suggested that I write some sort of a joke book, in language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
much
a possibility.
needed.
That would be a good
Much
activity.
needed.
You want to tell them a joke?
Oh, all right. Here's a free one. Anin ga kedod ao bijike gashkwa mizid mo. So it's what did the cow say when he was done
Going to the bathroom.
doing his business? Mo, which is
Go to the bathroom. And that was a young fellow, like 5 years old. His first language is Ojibwe,
Yeah.
and he made that joke up.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
That's very clever. That's
Mhm.
great. Roxanne, thank you for your comments. And Ira, always great to hear from you. Using puppetry to teach the children with actions of what they are saying. So do you guys use puppets in your presentations? And have you used them before?
Yeah, during winter storytelling, right? Adazukeng, with the with young children, it's great to have props and puppets ideally that really represent the characters that are told in those stories. Outside of that, though, I haven't used
Just playing. We have a
Yeah.
play corner in kindergarten, so
Oh, yeah.
playing with the puppets and the kids. Another really fun game we play is they'll run around in a room and we'll shout at a number in our language, and they'll latch on to. So if I shout two of them have to latch on, like cells. That game, really fun to play. And they're like trying to count together and latch on, and you'd be like 10, 7, 5. Yeah, very fun.
Thank you, Clarice, for your comments there. And Tamara, for your suggestions about the wood burning syllabic symbols into the back of your Scrabble tiles. I never thought of that. Doreen, thank you so much for your rock, paper, scissors idea. Leanna, she and her daughters play hangman to grow flour. We make a flower instead. Moving away from the violence in the play. Next step is remaining it in language. So that's something. So, a flower, like a deer hang, or in this case, a flower. And build a snowman, of course, we got that. So yeah, we've got a lot of ideas there.
Yeah, and I'm hoping in our breakout rooms, we can really expand on these ideas and add to them, and we'll have a list that we'll be able to share with everybody when we're done, of all the ideas you've all come up with, and then some, so we can all share with each other.
Yeah, so just like yesterday when we talked about immersion strategies, we've got a list. Today we'll make a list from the games and we'll upload them to the platform after our conference is done.
Mhm.
All right. And someone suggested using flashcards as well in a single line on the floor, and 2 students would play. One student at the other end, they'd have to say how each flashcard that they walk beside, when the 2 students meet, they play rock, paper, scissors, and the winner gets to keep going. So there's all kinds of innovative, creative ways here that our people are coming up with for the classroom. So we're gonna, in our breakout session, we'll get together and we'll discuss all this in a more informal session. But it's always nice to hear people's ideas
Mhm.
firsthand. All right. Is that your presentation then for now?
Yeah, me.
Mhm.
Miigwech.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is our session for games for children in language immersion. Thank you to Cass and Ben Mickaway. We're going to be taking a break and then going into our breakout session. So that'll be fun. And we have our play to win code word. The code word is fun. Pass it on. The play to win code word this time around is fun. Once again, fun is the play to win code. And I believe that's our final word. And now, once we wrap up our closing segments, we will announce the winners and for the draws of the wonderful artwork and everything else that we have here. So there you go. We're going to go to our breakout sessions. I believe, yes, we have, yeah, we're going to go to our breakout sessions in a couple minutes. So that's all I have to add at this point. I'll be facilitating those, and I apologize to the people who are in my breakout sessions because I'm not a teacher. I just want to have you share your ideas and your language too. I always look forward to that. So to the breakout sessions we go.